matter what occurs, I will find you.
Hey! We're recording the podcast! Shut up!
Good morning to you, wherever you are, because it is for August 30th, 2024. My name is Bernie Burns. I crushed that one. Nailed it. Right on the post. Sitting right over there. She's so happy it's Friday. She really actually is happy it's Friday today. It's Ashley Burns, everybody.
Thrilled that it's Friday. You ready for a weekend?
She got excited. She sat down in the chair. She's like, we have such a great Friday episode. Because
Well,
it's all
we
like,
do.
thank God for your workplace stuff.
Yes, there's an awful lot of stories here today they're like, oh man, this makes me grateful for the workplaces that I've had that have not done this to me.
I guess I have a conjecture about one of these stories we're talking about today.
All right, well, let's jump in. This is very appropriate to the drop anyway.
All current events today.
Yes, so a hiker has been rescued after his workmates left him on a mountain.
Where is this story, by the way? Where's
This is
it
in
from?
Colorado. This is
Colorado.
So basically, it was like a workplace outing. So it was a bunch of coworkers that were hiking in Colorado. This guy wanted to stop and take a break. His coworkers went on, and then it said he got disoriented on the descent, and they had gone ahead, and I guess they'd left in some like boulder field like markers to show like where they went to go. But as the overall group went back,
It sounded like they were dropping personal equipment is what they were doing.
Yes.
Is what it sounded like. So
Yes.
they were picking it up as they went down.
Right. And so then this guy who was coming behind didn't know where he was going. He got disoriented. He got lost. And then they had to launch this huge search and rescue mission to find him because a big storm rolled in. So he lost his cell signal and he fell down. They found him in a gully. It's this very dramatic thing.
Very dramatic.
Gonna cause a little bit of tension in the workplace on Monday, I think.
Right. Okay. Let me ask you a question about this.
Okay.
Because this is a story. And the headline is coworkers abandon their colleague, abandon him on a mountain and leave him.
Yes, the headline specifically, this is from the BBC, is hiker rescued after workmates left him on mountain, says search crew.
They say he stopped to take a break and that they went on without him. On his way down from the summit, he got disoriented. Now, the assumption here is they went to the top. I think that's where the story falls apart.
Okay, go ahead.
Whenever you read headlines like this, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe like 13 people said, okay, well, you need a break. Well, we're really tough bastards. We're going to go to the top and leave you. Yet somehow he got disoriented on the way down. Not that they were at the top of the mountain and he never got there, right?
Right.
It feels to me like having worked in a group of people and having experience with lots of people, one guy in the group was like, I'm going to the top. And they're like, no, we said we're going here. We're not going all the way to the top. And he's like, we're all the way here, man. Let's go to the top. He went up by himself, then came back down, and they had gone on their path and gone down. Because I guess the assumption is if you ever climb a mountain, you always go to the top. That's not always the case when you go out for a hike with coworkers.
Right. And in this case, if he didn't run into them again, because the article says...
How did they miss each other?
That he stopped for a break. Right. Well, that makes me wonder if there was like some sort of loop or some sort of overall trail. They must have looped back across this boulder field where they apparently removed their personal belongings that were marking the way they had come. So they had to retrace their steps for some part of it, but for them not to have run into each other, was there a loop or what is this exactly?
But it was really dire. Regardless of what happened, it was really dire. Freezing rain came along, knocked out his signal. He fell in a gully 20 times? Is that right? He fell in the gully?
He reported he'd fallen at least 20 times. He was left unable to get up. They eventually found him in a gully. He had enough cell signal. Initially, he called his coworkers and dropped them a pin, and they were like, you're nowhere near where you're supposed to be. You need to hike back up, find where you're supposed to be, and then follow the right trail down. So he tried to do that, but then this storm blew in. He lost his cell signal, and then I guess after the storm, while he's laying in this gully, he managed to get cell signal again and make an emergency call out. And that's when they launched they launched a helicopter and everything. Couldn't find him. Dude was wearing dark clothes.
Yeah.
Always wear fluorescents on the mountain.
No one stayed with this guy? Nobody? Like, if they're going to leave somebody, you're telling me a group of 13 people, nobody offered to stay and hike along with this guy? It's just interesting that one guy ended up by himself.
I feel like you're victim blaming a little bit here.
Am I? I think there's more to this story that might come out. Am I?
workplace dynamics. There's not a lot that's known about the
Let me
specifics
ask you-
of this. The guy hasn't been named. The coworkers haven't been named. The company that they're all from also hasn't been named. So they're keeping a lot of this mum.
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been in a group of about 10 to 14 people? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes, that has happened.
Has it happened to you on several occasions?
Indeed.
Have you ever been in a group of 10 to 14 people where 99% of the group goes, let's fucking leave that guy. Fuck that guy. Have you ever been in that scenario ever?
No.
And
No,
you're
I
like,
haven't.
hey, I know we're on a mountain. Fuck that guy. Let's
Well,
leave him. You tell me you've never been in that scenario.
No.
Let me propose another scenario. Have you ever been in a group of 14 people and there's one jackass who's like, let's do this. And everyone's like, we don't want to do that. He goes, well, I'm going to go fucking do that. Have you ever been with that?
Yeah, no, I've met
So
that guy.
have I, Ashley.
I met that guy.
I've been with that group way more than I've been with the first group. I've never been in the first group. I've been in that second group about 800 times in my life.
Well, the good news here, Bernie, is that it looks like he was able to stumble into a cottage that was made entirely out of candy.
And he met a witch.
After losing his way because the breadcrumbs had been picked up by his coworkers.
Yeah, that's the other too. I've also been like, hey, I left my backpack here as a marker. Steve will pick it up, right? I just pulled that name out of my ass. I don't know any jackasses named Steve. Do I? Steve. Coming back down the mountain and like, I'm gonna grab my backpack, man.
I'm not gonna trust Steve.
I'm curious if there's any more information that we can find out about this. We'll see how this plays out once the names come out and people are blamed and everything. But I apply my real world experience with stuff, and it's always when something goes wrong for somebody, it's easy to blame the rest of the group. When really most of the time, that's somebody who's going like, I'm doing my own thing. I know what I'm doing. Fuck y'all. Blah 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 blah. I've never heard of someone going, hey man, I really need to rest. I don't think I can make it up the mountain. And people are like, well then fuck you. You shouldn't have come. I've never run into that scenario.
Well, if it's worth anything, the guy who ran the search and rescue operation, Evan Brady, told the New York Times the suggestion the hiker had been abandoned by colleagues was overblown. So
Beard stroke here.
Perhaps there is a little bit more. There's another detail coming out. The guy who got lost. Oh, his name is Hansel.
I will say that his emergency call that he was able to make, it does sound like he has the latest iOS, and he was using the satellite feature, which we have a friend who worked on that. I had a friend who worked at Apple, where you can make satellite phone calls and pretty soon satellite texts and other things as well.
Yeah,
Maybe I got that
the idea
backwards.
being for situations like this where you're in the middle of nowhere, you don't have cell signal because if you've driven through a dead spot, you know when those dead spots hit, and it's very, very frustrating. But if you need to make an emergency call, guess what? Sometimes the network doesn't comply. So the satellites, at least if you can see the sky, you can make the call.
And a lot of times you can see the sky, usually. If you
Yeah,
can't,
even
you got an even bigger problem.
Even if you're in a goalie.
Then Elon Musk has to make a scuba diving torpedo in order to come help you. So this guy sounds like he has an Apple endorsement in his future. He'll be the guy. Like, have you ever gone up a mountain and your coworkers try to kill you? They pick up all the trail markers on the way back down. It doesn't look good for them, I have to admit. Like everything points to they took somebody on this trip who didn't want to go on the trip, took someone who couldn't go all the way, and then they just abandoned them and then picked up all the trail markers. I have a hunch, though, there's more to the story. I'm just going to say that. I know I sound cynical. I have a hunch there's more to this story.
You know, it's also one of those things, too, where no one's going to, like, conspire to, right? Like, we're going to leave this guy on the mountain. It's going to be hilarious. But it's very easy for just things to happen that add up to this terrible scenario. Let's say this dude is going, I just need to rest. I just need to sit down. And they're like, come on, man. It's been literally 10 minutes. We're still at the trailhead. And they're like, we're just going to catch up when you can, right? Just go ahead, take your break, whatever, catch up. We'll just be ahead. You know, no malice there. And then they're hiking back through, pick up their backpack that they left in the boulder field. Just don't even think about it, right? It just does not cross their mind that it is needed anymore.
All I'm saying is I believe in people. I really do. I really think that if you were 13 people and you were going along and you found a person on the trail who wasn't able to complete the trail, as a stranger, you wouldn't leave that person alone, right?
Right.
You would try to help that person. So someone you work with, they're like, I can't make it. I can't go on. They're like, well, dude, it's Saturday. You know, I really value my weekend time. Like, I don't know. What's the conversation where they leave the guy?
If I may,
Yeah.
Maybe they found out this guy's the one who's been stealing all the food out of their fridge.
They trapped him.
This is the revenge.
They left. That was the trail markers. Was all the empty Tupperware dishes. It was the most passive aggressive move of all time.
Well, speaking Bernie, of ignoring dangers to coworkers, there is
awful.
another story that's going to make you
This is awful.
hopefully make most of us grateful for the workplaces that we work in or have worked in, and that is that there's a lady who worked for Wells Fargo Bank in Arizona. She died at work. She was in her cubicle. They found her 4 days later.
Not an office. She was in a cubicle.
She was in a cubicle, not an office, not like a closed door office or anything. She was in a cubicle. She clocked in. She didn't clock out. She died at her desk.
Well, not officially. Sorry.
Wow.
Sorry.
Jesus, Bernie. And her coworkers reported that they had smelled something
What?
bad, but they thought it was a plumbing issue.
They thought Steve had left the fridge open after stealing food again. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's,
she died in her cubicle.
she died
You said
in
this
her
was a Good
cubicle.
Friday episode?
Well, this is going to make us all grateful for the places that we're currently working that we're about to leave to go home for the weekend.
Okay,
right?
now this is also a thing too. She was dead at her desk, they said, for what? How many days?
4 days.
So there is a work week, right? So if she died on a Friday, it's a little more excusable that people didn't notice until Monday, right? That's 2 days on the clock.
Yes, potentially, and I don't have the specific dates here, but it was several days. Apparently, most of the Wells Fargo employees in this particular office have been working remotely, and she's also sat in a, quote, very underpopulated area of the building, according to Wells Fargo. So she was just like off in a corner in some dim-ass cubicle, all on her own for 4 days.
It's horrifying. It's such
It's
like late-stage
absolutely
capitalism
horrendous.
dystopia. Yeah, it's just awful. I mean, I get it. I relate to her. I've been in some meetings where I thought I'd rather die right now. I get it.
Hey, Bernie, we can make jokes about the Colorado hiker because he's alive. This lady was dead for 4 days at her desk.
It's awful. It's dead at your desk. It's not the dead at your desk. People die. It's part of the human experience. Probably one of the most natural things there is. To go undiscovered after dying at work. There's just so much that plays into that, right? It's like, she was at work. I don't know what she died of or anything, but I'm assuming she wasn't feeling well.
Yeah,
she wasn't in good health.
I don't think they released the official cause of death or anything. Could you imagine if it was like a choking death or something?
Oh, stop it. We don't need this is Friday. We don't need to conjecture about how it was.
Okay, all right.
What is that what you went to was choking?
That's what I would go to is choking or potentially a heart attack or something. But if you're all alone in this area, I guess if you're at your desk, probably not choking, right? Because I think you said that most people who die of choking actually die in like a bathroom or something.
Yeah, they go off and hide.
If she was the only one around, where would she go for help anyway?
Right. I was just assuming some natural causes kind of a thing. And I guess, does it say her age on there?
She was 60.
Yeah, 60 was what I was thinking in my head. So I knew I'd read that somewhere. Who can say? But it's just like, oh my God, you go to work and you're working at 60 and you die and nobody notices for a few days. It's just awful. The whole situation's just awful. So yes, I'm very grateful for I would rather be left on a mountain by my workplace people. Would the Rooster Teeth people have left us on a mountain? Do you think? Can you imagine that?
Would it have been content?
I'm trying to think of anyone who would. Gavin would be the most likely to leave me on a mountain. The problem with the scenario is
Gavin wouldn't be on a mountain in the first place.
100%. He would not. I'm not going up a
try
mountain.
and get a workplace bonding experience together, hiking up a mountain. Gavin is not on that list.
We would point at the mountain and go, don't you want to go up to the summit? He goes, it's right there. I can see it. He wouldn't even be up there in the first place.
He would take a helicopter up and then jump out of the helicopter.
If I was dead in my office, 100% though, Gavin would not notice for. But what's the over under on that? 9 months?
Yeah, I'd give it 6. Benefit of the doubt. Am I right?
After like my 5th happy birthday text from him, then he'd be like, I should check in on him. So it'd be about 5.5 years is what I'm guessing.
No, not someone's got this. Well, I'll tell you what, if you're now horrified by workplaces in general, it's time to clock out. It's time to go home for the weekend. Go home. Maybe take your 4-year-old to a museum.
Oh, I have another workplace story. Can I tell about a horrible workplace story? Can we end on the high note of the 4-year-old destroying ancient archaeological finds?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was reading this story. The Paralympics are going on. Paralympic athlete of the day. This is an interesting one. The Afghan Taekwondo athlete has won the first ever medal for the refugee Paralympic team.
Interesting. I didn't know there wasn't a refugee team.
And I immediately fell down the rabbit hole of what is the refugee Paralympic team? And it's people who have refugee status in other countries. So it's an entirely separate, distinct Paralympic team. And they have their country of origin, who they're not competing for. And then they also have their National Paralympic Committee of their current country that has recognized them, but they're also not competing for them. And so the Taekwondo champ, she won the first ever medal for the refugees. Currently in the 2024 Paralympics, there are about 8 athletes competing on the refugee Paralympic team. Country of origins include Cameroon, Iran, Afghanistan, Syria, and Colombia. Emilio Castro Grueso is wheelchair fencing. They are competing for Italy, and their country of origin was Colombia. I guess they're competing for the refugee team. Their host country is Italy, and their origin country is Colombia. It's just interesting to me.
No, there's a lot to that.
You hear me stumbling around trying to figure out how to talk about this because it's such a unique thing. I kind of like that. I kind of like that there's like this now no country Olympics team.
Well,
I like it.
It's nice that they are doing their best not to let people fall through the cracks.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yeah.
just because you've had to, flee your country doesn't mean that you are not that you don't deserve to be recognized as an extremely talented sportsman, as evidenced by the Afghan Taekwondo champ.
And this athlete who won bronze, Zakia Kudati, she is originally from Afghanistan. Her current country that recognized her is France. Kudati, who was born without one forearm, began practicing Taekwondo in secret at age 11 in a hidden gym in her hometown of Herat in Western Afghanistan.
All right, that is a level of dedication that I have never shown in my entire life.
I know, these you hear about these Olympians, and it's always this crazy story of just like they found some way, especially depending on what country they're from, some way to just follow their passion and just go all in on one sport. It's just wild. And if you're missing a forearm, Taekwondo. It was something I would love to hear more about the story, like how she got started. Maybe she had some inspirational coach or something, but something in her drove her, and now she has an Olympic medal.
And
it's really
that's
cool.
it's incredible.
But this ties into the workplace thing too, because I was reminded of this. Did you hear about the athlete who was competing in the Paris Olympics from Nigeria, and she was a sprinter or runner, and she couldn't run in one of the races because they didn't turn in the paperwork for her.
What?
Her Olympic committee in her country just didn't put in her paperwork in time. We didn't talk about it during the Olympics. I'll read it really
I didn't know
briefly.
about this.
Nigeria's Favor Ofili will not compete in the women's 100 meters at the Paris Games after the country's athletics federation and Olympic organizing committee failed to enter her in the event, the sprinter said.
What did they do? Just not do the paperwork?
Well, she was registered for the women's 200 and the 4x100 relay on Wednesday, but yeah, they just didn't turn in the paperwork for one of the races that she had trained for. And this is from an article from July 31st of this year on Reuters.
I sense some administrators are going to get left on a mountain.
And she'd actually been through it before because she couldn't compete in the Tokyo Games because her country forgot to do all the required testing of their athletes in time.
What?
So she couldn't do it. So imagine that she already went through this like administrative snafu one time, and then she's training for the next 4 years thinking, well, that can't possibly happen again. And then they didn't fill out the paperwork for her to compete. So once again, be grateful for your workplace.
Yeah, look, if I'm that lady, I'm taking all their lunches out of the fridge.
She wants to take somebody hiking.
All right, so moving on to as we go home for the weekend.
Quality time with the
To
kids.
spend quality time with the children. Maybe take them somewhere to really teach them about the beautiful history of our world, perhaps a natural history museum, and let them break
this story.
3,500-year-old jars.
Oh my God. Have you ever done anything like that? So kid,
I mean, of course, but not at that scale.
what they say, he was driven by curiosity, a 4-year-old, and he pushed over a vase, a jar basically, that they even said it was like from the time of King Solomon. I don't even know when that was. They were using all these references that make it sound so ancient.
This jar dates back to the Middle Bronze Age. So between 2200 and 1500 BC, it predates the time of King David and King Solomon and is characteristic of the region. It was probably used to store and transport wine or olive oil, something like that. This is
or Tyrannosaurus eggs.
This is one of the best, most intact specimens they've ever found. Very
Not so
notable.
fast, my friend.
Not anymore. So
I wouldn't go throwing out words like intact.
So mom and dad took their 4-year-old to this museum, and this jar was on display in the museum entrance. And this kid just he was curious about it. He reached out, he touched it, he knocked it over, and it shattered on the floor.
And it's so easy. It's so easy to blame the parents, right? Because you're around all this stuff. Here's why I blame the parents. Not because the 4-year-old touched the thing and broke it, because that's what 4-year-olds do. That's what they do. They touch stuff.
And
If
also,
they can touch
somehow
it,
this jar is sticky now.
the best way to get a 4-year-old to touch something is tell them that they can't touch it. And then they will try everything in their power to touch that thing. What I do blame the parents for is taking their 4-year-old to a museum. I know they're trying to give him a great experience. The 4-year-old does not care about the old vases. I mean, the 4-year-old probably didn't even want to be there in the first place, you know? And we do all these things as parents to try to enlighten our children and elevate them. And it's just he probably won't even remember it. He will now, you know? He definitely will now. But he probably didn't even want to be there in the first place.
When he's ungrounded in 4 years. No, but I've been to museums as a kid, and I do remember having some really great experiences. But Bernie, the museums that I went to were the Children's Discovery Museum, where they have a sand pit with dinosaur bones that have been buried, and you use little brushes to uncover them. Or they have this dark room where
was it real dinosaur bones or cement cast?
Oh, they were cement cast, of course. Or you there's a dark room with lights and it flashes and you jump and you make a funny shape and then it leaves a shadow on the wall, or that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Kid museums. Been to those, love them, think they're great.
Yes, until you're 10, probably honestly until you're 15. The kids don't want to go to that stuff.
No,
they really don't.
Take them to the kids' science museum where they can play with magnets.
The good news is because I briefly perused this article, it sounded like the museum director was like, hey man, this stuff happens. We like to put out these displays where people can have full access to archaeological finds. We're not going to change our policy based on this. I thought that was really cool.
No, it is pretty amazing. So let's see. Rivlin, who's I believe the curator here, says the museum believes there's a special charm in experiencing an archaeological find without any obstructions. And despite the rare incident with the jar, the Hecht Museum will continue this tradition. So they're not going to start locking stuff up as a result of this. And in my opinion, this is the most level-headed, patient, and kind museum curator of all time, because they were like, kids fine, it's cool, they're totally welcome to come back. We'll give them a nice tour, we'll show them the jar once we have it repaired. They're reaching out to, I don't know, prehistoric jar experts. I'm sure there's loads of those just hanging around.
They should get that lady who did the Jesus fresco where she restored it and it ended up looking like the Scream.
The melting Jesus. Yeah, that one was insane. So that was a while ago now, but yeah. What was it? It was a lady she was trying to restore a church fresco or something. Jesus.
This is from an article in 2012. She was an 81-year-old amateur restorer, and she tried to restore the 19th century Spanish fresco. When she did it, little did she know her work would become a worldwide media sensation. It was actually done without permission. The priest didn't know about it.
No, this was a rogue restoration.
And when he saw it, he thought it had been vandalized. We can talk about this all day. I'm sure you've seen it before, but we'll post a link in the link dump to this lady who tried to restore basically a painting of Jesus. And it just came out in the most ridiculous fashion you could ever possibly imagine.
That was the meme of the year, I feel like.
It was
in 2012.
It wasn't even A for effort, good try, participant trophy. It's lady.
It's what did you do?
What are you doing? It looks like a child.
You know what it does? It looked like someone took a 4-year-old to the church and let him loose with paint.
And it doesn't help either that it was so well documented. They had what it looked like before, and then afterwards, even the parts that weren't needing restoration, she made incredibly worse somehow. It's unbelievably bad. She got the hard parts to me. She got them right. The bottom edge has a scroll that's rolled up. That actually looks halfway decent, but the face, she should not be doing faces. That's for sure. Oh my God.
It's have you seen the old medieval paintings of people who've never seen a cat but are trying to paint a cat? It's like that.
If she restored this jar that this kid knocked over, it would come back like a plate. It's what you'd have.
And what is all this? Oh, I just thought I'd add some color. That's glazing. You've made a mosaic.
It's not that hard, Scott. Tell him, Wash.
It's incredibly hard.
Hey, anything worth doing is.
All right, well, that does it for us this Friday. Hey, have a great weekend and just be grateful for all your coworkers who were not mentioned in any of today's stories.
All right, and as for people that we're grateful for today, Blair McIntyre and Trey Faulkner, thank you both for sponsoring this episode of our show at patreon.com/morningsomewhere.
Thank you, you two beautiful people.
We would never leave you on a mountain.
We would never, ever leave you on a mountain. I would go ahead without you, and then I would get lost. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right, well, that does it for us this week, ending August 30th, 2024. We will be back to talk to you tomorrow. We hope you will be here as well.
Bye, everybody.